Good afternoon. Thank you for standing by, and welcome to the Minden Dialogue Technical Subcommittee call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. Jonathan Wang, you may begin your conference.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this call. My name is Jonathan Wang. I work for the EPA in David's staff. He's out today, but I think he's listening in. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Doug, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for stepping in. As always, we're going to limit the conversation to Dialogue Committee participants as we move through this, but we will hope to save a little bit of time at the end for public comments, and we'll switch the phones over, and you'll hit star 1 if you wish to make a comment at that time. We have a really packed agenda. I want to spend just a little bit of time sort of orienting us to where we are and what's going on, but I'd like to try to move through that as quickly as we can to get to really discussing the range of technologies that we have on the table right now and how we move forward. Sam Coleman, are you back online?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Good. I'll make sure. Is Colonel Stuckey on the line? I didn't.
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, great. And I heard Karen Price, I believe, and Tina also checked in. So I think all the agencies are online at this point. What I wanted to do is just quickly kind of orient everyone to where we are, because obviously we have our next big and potentially last in-person meeting of the Dialogue Committee on Wednesday, and this is our last scheduled conference call of the committee, the work group, to prepare for that and have some information that the work group might want to put in front of folks. We may want to amend that as we get to the end of this, but we just kind of want to bring everyone up to speed. And I was having a conversation with Sam over the weekend about how the EPA moves forward and what it prepares to hand off to the Guard to do its procurement. I just thought it would be useful to everyone to kind of hear that and understand the overall sort of steps and timing of what happens from here forward, at least as it's known right now. So with that, I'm just going to ask Sam if he could spend a minute or two just orienting us to that.
Sure. Thanks, Doug, and welcome, everyone. Excuse me. So as we really get down to crunch time and continue to move forward, I first of all want to thank everybody for all the hard work that folks have put in looking at the vendor presentations, preparing questions, reviewing all of that information. There's lots of work that has actually gone forward that has been very, very productive and very informative. As we look at how we can best help this process and move forward, there are a couple of things that we're looking at. One is if you look online and look at our website, you will find a thing that we commonly call an action memo, which is EPA's method of effectively modifying of communicating our viewpoint of the risk and how we might abate the risk associated with a particular site or hazard. And for Camp Minden, our action memo that is currently in place does refer to open burn as the remedy that is the method of mitigating the M6 hazard that exists. We're looking at modifying that action memo to essentially consider other options for burning, and we wanted to do that shortly after we have concluded our conversations on Wednesday, as we would continue to move forward. We want to make sure that that's done prior to the Louisiana Military Department, the National Guard, receiving all of their bids and quotes. And the modification of the action memo would, in effect, authorize them to receive quotes or bids concerning a multiple or more than one option for dealing with the M6. Now, the exact language is something that we're discussing with our lawyers and some other folks to make sure that we do this all right. But effectively, this action memo will be changed that will allow the Louisiana Military Department to consider bids for more than open burning and also consider bids for more than things that involve thermal destruction. But it will say that whatever process that they receive bids for, it must be effective, it must be proven, and it must meet certain criteria that we really want to discuss a little bit more. I think we're going to have some discussion about that during this call today, but we also want to make sure we have some more detailed discussions with the National Guard about what that criteria is. So I'm gonna just stop there, Doug, just to make sure that I'm on the right track answering the questions and make sure that folks have a chance to ask me the questions that they have.
Thanks, Sam. Questions for Sam about sort of how that process is going to move forward? All right, folks comfortable with that? So I just want to quickly then touch on what that means for the dialogue committee and the scope and shape of the input it might be producing moving forward here, starting today and through Wednesday. So I think we started this conversation last week where we recognized that it wasn't necessary that the group come to a single technology. That this wasn't actually a group consensus process, and all input will be gathered, and we'll look for areas of convergence as the facilitators. But I also think it's important that people understand, even as we're going through today, it probably makes sense to identify what are the couple of technologies that people feel hopeful about or feel that they want to make sure are considered strongly and move forward, and also what are the sort of factors, performance criteria kind of things that are important to stakeholders in the community around the issues that are important both for EPA to produce its action memo and for the Guard to do its procurement. So how they make sure they're reviewing for the things that are most important to the community. Does that make sense as we move forward? Any additions or questions around that? And Slavo, I see your hand up.
Yes. So I have a maybe general comment and maybe also a question to EPA, and it's a little bit based on what kind of responses we've seen from different technologies. And like you said, we wanted to move forward and decide a little bit, maybe to put forward one or two technologies or three, if possible, that the committee looks favorable at. Now, my biggest concern is, what we have seen so far from almost all the vendors, that there is no any indication actually what kind of level of emission is anticipated. And what I mean that even the analysis that we were provided, they don't make any more definitive statement what would be the total overall emission, because even when you have this liquid waste or gas waste, it doesn't give us the overall number of how much of chemicals will be released in this small area, because it's all the dilution factors that you have. Every analysis, whichever you can do, will show you is below detection limit, but because of the volume that we are dealing with, I think we should put, or EPA should put, some definite number limit on how much overall of organics can be released.
EPA, do you have any response to that? Is that a reasonable request, or at what point would that become a reasonable request in the process?
Yes, that is a very reasonable request, and as you folks may not have had a chance to look at some of the questions, but we did prepare a detailed list of questions for all of the vendors on Friday. The question that Slavo just mentioned actually was one of the questions that we had, which is we asked the vendors to essentially state their destruction efficiency and state the methods in which they would use to assure that they could attain and meet that destruction efficiency across the board. We also asked that they discuss their emission limits for organics and how they intended to meet those limits. Because some of the presentations actually included information on that and several did not. So that's a question that we have. I think, as folks know, we do have within the state of Louisiana as applicable regulations, there are very specific limits on air toxics for a variety of chemicals, and those have been provided to the vendors. Karen can perhaps talk about that a little bit more. And we will be expecting that everyone would meet or exceed those limits that the state has put in place.
Thanks, Sam. Brian?
Yes, hi. So I just wanted to comment that, none of us on the citizens group have any delusion that our input here has any legal authority. We see this as a courtesy that's been extended to all of us here by this guidance. Okay, here I'm closer now. We see it as a courtesy here that we've been provided with this opportunity. Nevertheless, we have on faith in people, and we think that our concerns are going to be listened to because we've spent a lot of time and a lot of evaluation here. And so as we boil down to maybe just a few technologies, there is no one perfect one. But one concern I want to voice is that if anything is selected, regardless of how much input you accept from us at all, one thing we will not really be happy with is a permanent facility being set up there that's going to address waste beyond the scope of what this problem is. We really need you to understand this, and I'm talking to the EPA, to the Army, to whomever, that this is very important to us, and I think I'm speaking for everybody that I know. I can't think of anybody that wants a permanent waste processing, even repurposing, nothing permanent out of what has been a very unfortunate thing that has happened here. We just want a remedy.
Thanks, Brian. And we heard that strongly last week as well, and we'll definitely put that right at the top of the list of performance and factors that are important to the community as we
okay.
wrap up our today.
Thank you.
Bob, I see your hand.
Yes. Thank you. And hello, everybody. We spent a great deal of time this weekend. The committees have probably in meetings, probably at least 10 or 15 hours. And one of the things that strikes home with me is that as a scientific process, we have to select something, and I heard you say earlier what we feel is right, which you probably didn't realize what you said, but I look at things factually, and that's what we've got to keep in mind with whatever method is selected by EPA or by our committee, what we recommend. We want it truly to be based on what is the safest method and what will get it done the quickest. I think those are the two things, but it must be a scientifically solid method in which we know that there's going to be, at the end, this M6 is going to be destroyed, and we're not going to contaminate either the water in the area or the air. So those are two things that I think we need to keep in mind as we look at procedures. It's got to be factual. It's got to be something that's safe and something that doesn't leave a residue for further cleanup.
Thanks, Bob. And that is how the various factors and criteria are laid out. So it's important that we all keep that in mind as we look at our technologies here shortly. Any other comments kind of on where we are and where the dialogue process needs to get to? So just quickly, I want to bring people up to date on where we are with the vendor responses. You've all seen my various emails trying to keep track of all this stuff. So as of this morning, I had sent you the latest that included Munirem. So we had heard from Arctech, Aton, CO2AL, DaVinci, Eldorado Equipment, Munirem, and US DMIL. Not all of them answered all of the questions that had been posed. They are still working on it. I just this morning received another email from Eldorado, and I also just received email from Clean Harbors. So that means the only people I haven't heard from at all yet is the CH2M Hill team and General Atomics. And if anyone has heard from those, if they could make sure to send them to me, and I'll get them right out to folks as well. That's where we stand with that input, and my understanding is that EPA and the Army are still looking at those vendor materials, so we haven't seen anything definitive from them yet at all, other than what Sam sent out this weekend, sort of grouping it into the ones they have fewer questions on than those that they have more questions on, which tracks some of what was happening within the questions that were being asked as well, because some technologies folks had lots and lots of questions, others had fewer. We received 3 white papers this weekend, which I also forwarded yesterday. One on the DDESB approval process and how systems get approved through that process. One on white paper on the submersion of M6 propellant in water and looking at that and the various cautions around that, and another white paper on the current status of propellant stabilization, what that means moving forward. These were key questions that have been asked throughout the process, and we now have more definitive, clear answers from the Army on those. I don't want to spend a lot of time on those if we don't need to, but I certainly want to give an opportunity if anybody has clarification questions or reflections or observations they want to make on any of those things. And I see Brian's hand.
Yes, I read the Army's document, and I think there's a missed opportunity there by the Army that up to this point in time that they have never done the studies that would really demonstrate that there could be some long-term stability gained and time bought, so to speak, by submersing this material in water. Now, they do mention that could enhance the rate of decomposition, but that's a whole different ball game underwater. So they point out accurately that there's no local heat buildup. There could be some nitric acid produced, but you can add water-soluble stabilizer there that will take care of all of that, and there's not going to be any increased harm from that nitric acid that's produced in water. And I believe the rate, as long as the water is kept neutral or slightly basic, that rate of decomposition is going to be very slow. So I would encourage the Army researchers and the Army authorities there to still consider those opportunities for the future and not to write it off. I hope there's never another Camp Minden, but certainly I'm a proponent of repurposing, and submersing material in water is a way to buy time and to buy ease of transportation safely.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions on these topics? Okay, so moving on, and obviously this is where we really want to be, talking about technologies. I just offered up a very high-level summary table to facilitate our conversation. Obviously, we have lots of information, both in the original tables that were provided by vendors, the answers to questions that were provided by vendors. What I've done here, and I've done this without your permission, and I did it purposely, not as any sort of final thing, just to start the conversation and think about this, is that I went to the original list that had the various technologies on the ammunition and explosives ESB list that was provided to us by the Army, and according to the Army, it looks like the vast majority of those technologies are not appropriate for M6 at the volume we're dealing with here at Camp Minden, and so I went through and sort of highlighted the ones that clearly did not seem to make sense, which would have been this field deployable hydrolysis, the APE rotary kiln, the NWP and CRTDA, which I don't remember the acronyms, tactical missile demilitarization, the Dynasafe static detonation chamber, the explosives destruction system, Donovan chambers, of course, open burn that is there for comparison, and identifying them as most of them not having the throughput, and/or in the case of open burn, not being able to meet the controllable emissions, as simply not scientifically, technically capable of doing the job, and therefore should just kind of be put aside for now. Does anybody disagree with just that basic cut right now? That leaves on the table for the moment everything that we heard from vendors in the last week, including the Da Vinci. Having trouble with this thing. The Da Vinci, which was actually also on the AE list, but I've left that on the full list for now, just highlighting that it does have some throughput challenges. The idea then would be, A, do we agree with that, and B, then are there others on this list? I know you guys have spent the weekend, a lot of folks spent the weekend looking at this list. Would like to get agency input as well that clearly just don't seem to be able to do the task. Bob?
I took the privilege the other night of putting together a table such as what you have, not near as extensive, but most of us have not seen these tables. I haven't, that you've constructed, and
right.
I would like to.
There's nothing here that I made up. I just grabbed it from what the vendors told us. So I wasn't trying to interpret. Go ahead. Sorry, Bob.
So can we get this print this off from what's on the screen now? We can just print this off and review it.
I sent this to you with the agenda this morning.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Excuse me,
all right.
Mr.
Thank
Lower. Where is the Dynasafe tunnel furnace on this chart?
The tunnel furnace wasn't that the CH2M Hill?
Yeah,
team?
But I guess we'll just consider it absorbed under that heading then.
Yeah, I should have been more clear with that heading. I'm sorry. I just basically went with, because we were getting responses from the individual vendors, I just went with the vendor name on this for the moment.
I see, okay.
So my apologies. I'll if we use this moving forward, I'll make that more explicit.
Yeah, and XPAL should be on there somehow.
Right. That team has Dynasafe, XPAL, and at least one other. Brian.
Oh, yes, okay. I wanted to comment about the ARCTEC process. So ARCTEC was very forthcoming with a lot of answers over the weekend. I think of any vendor, they did the most homework for us and provided us with a lot of information. And so I am not suggesting that Arctech be removed from consideration. However, I still have concerns about the ultimate end use as a fertilizer. Now, in their questions and answers, they were able to be more flexible there and provide other potential routes. I don't know if any of those would be potentially useful to us here. But I like a company that works towards innovation. And over the long term, I see potential there. But as far as the fertilizer application, I think further studies, long-term studies, are needed about something that is sequestered. Is it going to stay sequestered, say, in a humic acid material for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? That's not known yet. So I just wanted to weigh in about that. And I'm not saying to remove them from the process. I just had those questions about the end use as a fertilizer at this time.
This is Dolores. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dolores.
I just want to second what Brian said, and I also want to point out that I looked through the documents and I could find no reference at all to DBP. We've got 450,000 pounds of that, and it doesn't appear to have been studied, and it's not even listed as an ingredient in the M6 as provided by architects. So I've got a little bit of an issue with that, and particularly if they think they're going to take it and put it on any kind of land with such holes in the safety research.
Okay. Slavo?
Yes, I actually agree with Brian, what he said, and I still have a lot of concerns, despite the materials that Arctech sent about the composition of their waste water or this fertilizer feed, because when I looked at it, this is a very huge dilution problem that they are dealing here with, and even if they send it for analysis, you may not see that it's non-detect, but if you consider how much of material is being treated, it will pile up to a potentially, I'm not saying that it will, but it requires some more detailed insight on this water feed.
Okay, thank you. So just as a point of process, would it make sense just to walk through these kind of in order and based, I know you spent a lot of time, several folks on the call have spent a lot of time looking at these and understanding them and talking to them about them. And would it make sense to kind of walk through them in order and just sort of identify whether at the moment we think they are sort of in the green, yellow, or red category? So, based on what I'm hearing right now, folks would put Arctech in that yellow category, which is it could work, but right now there's a lot of questions.
Excuse me. The fertilizer can't work. They may have another option. They were mentioning landfill, and they said they were going to provide one other one. That might work, but I'm going to go on record. The fertilizer, I think, has issues at this time regarding the safety studies. Ms. Dolores.
Okay. Other thoughts around that?
The fertilizer I put in the red category, and the landfill or whatever their other plan is would go in the yellow.
Okay, so you wouldn't want the liquid fertilizer to be just put out? No, not
on Grand Isle, not on anywhere in South Louisiana, not anywhere on the beaches. No.
And this is Wilma. I totally agree with her.
So hearing, and I see a couple of check marks too. So the idea is saying the accidental process might work, but not the disposal. That it would have to go to some actual landfill or proper disposal facility.
Or some type of recycling down the line if there's some way to turn it into vinyl or some type of other chemical or something.
Okay.
It's an interesting process. It's a good process but that's too risky right now in terms of the chemicals, particularly when a huge chunk of the M6 is just not even referred to or given, no information is provided on it. DBP is like nothing you want to fool with. It's a toxin you don't really want close to you.
Okay, thanks, Dolores. Bob?
I think this is great, these charts, and I recommend that we proceed through them. But I wonder about EPA. Have they done some charts too to look at these processes? And is that something we're going to be considering their charts today, or are they just going to look at ours?
I'll defer to EPA. I mean, we provided them with this concept, so we do hope that we'll get some weigh-in. And I know they've been working hard on stuff. And I do need to make a correction. I indicated the Army also would be weighing in on these. They will not. That EPA will be the ones weighing in on this. Sam, are you guys?
Yeah, let me respond to that. And so we have done detailed analysis, which led to our list of questions that we sent, and we hope to hear back from the vendors. Doug, I don't know that they've answered any of our questions yet, so we are anxiously awaiting getting that information. But specifically to the type of color coding and the attempt to eliminate any technology from consideration, we would be very cautious about doing that prior to us having all information that they had the opportunity to demonstrate that they could effectively deal with the M6 and that they could effectively demonstrate what their waste streams are and what their emissions are. I don't feel like they've done that up to now, and obviously in the absence of good information, then we can't consider something that does not appear to be effective. But we did want to give the vendors a little bit of time to respond to those specific questions that we had, as well as the questions that the community had. So we just don't feel like it's a little premature right now to color code or to eliminate anyone.
How much longer, Sam, you think we need to take? Because we got to have it by Wednesday, something figured out. It's Dolores.
Right. I think that's the challenge for the dialogue committee is trying to. I mean, I don't think it'd be that useful for them to just say, well, then they all move forward because we don't have enough information. Folks are gonna want to weigh in on something here. So timing becomes an issue.
But this is Wilma, as we discuss this, and in this case we were discussing about applying the liquid fertilizer to whatever, agriculture, marsh, or whatever, the vendors are going to hear this discussion. So this in one sort of way provides them with information that they feel that they can feel what we are expressing without putting the colors on it, but having the information out there for them.
Well, this is Sabo. So what I would like to comment on what I believe Summit was who said it, that they have to provide some more analysis of their waste streams, and some testing. However, I'm afraid this is kind of impossible in a sense that to do that they have to build their own facilities on site to test it and how it's going to look like. So this is going to be down the stream, and the goal of this committee is just to recommend something.
Right. Okay. So I think through this call, what we're going to try to do is identify what are the key challenges or issues that folks see with each of the different technologies, and then see where we are with that. And we can use this kind of chart to identify the individual columns, maybe more so than try to come to some overall conclusion about the technologies. I think at the end there is a lack of information, and people have also brought up the challenge for information that's being held back for proprietary reasons in a very reasonable way, but then also makes it hard. And we're not the procurement process here. We're just trying to weigh in on issues that are important to stakeholders and the community. So, Bob?
Sam, I would ask have we given these vendors and our dialogue committee a definite time that they've got to have the answers in so that we can then start putting all the stuff on paper? It's like this weekend we tried to fill out a table, but we had blank places because we didn't have the remarks or the answers from the vendors. So we've got to come up with a date and a time that these questions got to be answered, and then we go from there, because we may be going into Wednesday and still not have the complete answers on everything.
So, yeah, I agree with that 100%, and I would suggest we give a time of perhaps tomorrow at noon or 10 a.m. or something like that will be the cutoff that we can consider all information. Doug, what do you think?
Well, that's so recognize there are some folks that we haven't gotten answers to some of the questions yet. There are also other folks who've answered all the questions, but
they've had adequate time, I think.
But you don't have all the information you need, and that's sort of a secondary problem, right? And so, folks are going to put their best foot forward in the procurement process and provide all that detail, but we're not going to get all that level of detail they're going to put into the procurement process. I mean, it's not practical or feasible to be there. So I think at some level, yes, let's go back and say, look, if you want to be considered in any more process, then you need to get us that information by noon tomorrow. And there's one or two vendors who we haven't heard from at all yet. The challenge for us becomes one, and you all just, we're going to have to think about it, is we're not going to have perfect information. We're not going to have complete information. We're going to have information similar to what we have right now, maybe a little better. So that is a dilemma for us. Mickey, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Doug, based upon what you just said, I totally agree with that. I mean, without all the information, you can't make a decision on a technology for certain. But what I wanted to comment on is, are we deciding on a technology? I mean, the ultimate goal of the committee is not to decide on the technology, it's to provide recommendations and input on what we want to see in the selection process with whoever's doing the procurement side of it, correct?
Right, and so that's part of the challenge for this call too, is to sort of frame what do you all see your input looking like, and so I think we had in the last call and maybe moving into this call thought we might identify a few of the most promising technologies, but now it may actually be sort of providing some stakeholder input on all of the technologies. With an overall set of sort of factors and performance criteria that are important from the committee members' point of view. Does that seem to make maybe more sense?
Well, my thought was to provide an opportunity to help whoever's doing the procurement process will need, and the EPA as well, is that our input and all of our research, and certainly there's been plenty of it done, is to provide them with some help in selection based upon what the citizens would like to see regarding the safety of their community, et cetera, and that's
exactly,
and that would be in the way of criteria more than anything else. So because we're not involved in the decision, we're only there to help the decision makers understand what it is necessary for a safe disposal of this product.
But does that also point to, providing some input on specific technologies around how they seem to be achieving the criteria or not, or some of the key questions around that? Because that's what I just heard as well. So there's the general, here's the criteria that's important to the dialogue committee, but how do you also want to provide more technology-specific input?
Well, I guess the next question would be, can we do that? That's important.
That's the question I'm asking.
I think that would be answered by procurement to really understand whether or not we can do that.
other thoughts around this, because this really gets right to what kind of conversation we want to have and where you want to sort of move toward in the next couple days.
So this is Wilma. Doug, looking at your chart, the way you set it up, it identified categories of technologies. And
right.
I think we have gotten to that point because we've interacted with the vendors and Colonel identified which ones had contacted him, and then we were finding out more about each one of them and what they were being and going to propose as part of this process. So we now have these technologies listed in your table, and I guess one question would be, is there any of these technologies that you cannot live with? And then secondly, if all of these are going to stay on the table, and I understand what Sam said about not ranking them and not pushing them off and things like that, then what do we need to identify either under each one of these technologies or overall, what do we need to identify as issues that we want to be sure are covered?
Right. I think that's the question on the table. Thank you, Wilma. Brian?
Yes. So with regards to potential disposal, now the EPA at some point in our lifetimes is going to have to recognize publicly that carbon dioxide is causing trouble for us, okay? The rate of melt in Greenland is now translating down into into Antarctica and the south part of South America, and we are seeing tremendous effects from the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. So any thermal approach, including SQO, is going to generate massive amounts of carbon dioxide, millions and millions of pounds, which someday I firmly believe is going to have to be sequestered at high cost. And we're not being very thoughtful here because we're considering, of course, the explosive hazard, but there are other processes that could potentially address that explosive hazard. And you characterize the ArcTech process as a yellow one because of its end use as a fertilizer. But in their answers to our questions, they said that there was a potential to put this material in a secure landfill that would be secure for hundreds of years and not have any emissions, not have any toxicity. And that's something I personally would like to hear more about. So putting a yellow over the entire ArcTech process is not my intention, just the fertilizer.
No, that was clear. And I wasn't proposing that. I was just testing the questions as to how, that we can get a direction we're headed. And what I feel like the direction we're heading is not to necessarily put any overall rating on any of these technologies, but just to talk about them individually and identify the challenges or questions you have, across the columns that reflect the factors that are important to you as a community. And that's what I'm hearing. And as Wilmer said, is sort of how do we then identify all those factors that are important to move forward or to provide information on. So, and please let me be clear about my role. If I'm asking a question or making a suggestion, I'm trying to reflect what I'm hearing from the group. I am not making that suggestion. Right? My opinion does not matter. Any other thoughts about kind of this where we are overall in the approach, and are folks comfortable with kind of moving through these just kind of one by one in the next 45 minutes or so, just to see what kind of questions and issues are raised and important, so that we can capture those, and then ultimately see what that looks like, and then capture before the end of this call sort of those more big picture criteria and factors that we want to make sure we also move forward. And in taking all of that information, that might help us frame sort of a draft conversation to have on Wednesday. I see a few checks and no. Brian, is your hand up from before, or do you have a new comment?
Oh, it's not up. I take it down.
Okay. So then let's move forward and let's have, why don't we just do that same level of conversation that we've just had on ArcTech, the active demo process with the other technologies as well. Again, to sort of identify the things that look good, promising, are important, the things that are challenging, and that you might want to highlight, and just kind of see where we get with the big picture of once we talk about all of these things. Any other comments, thoughts, questions around the active demo process? Okay, let's move to the SWO process, the General Atomics supercritical oxidation. Thoughts, comments, issues around that? Slava.
So this would be for both ArcTech and General Atomics, applying to both of the methods, because if the ArcTech will not decide to use it as fertilizer, then there is an issue of the amount of wastewater that is being produced. And if it says it's 3 to 10 gallons per minute, I would imagine that it will create millions and millions of gallons of wastewater at the end. And we still didn't get, the question was asked before if they can actually recycle this water. We still don't know it. And I think the best thing, what they can do is if they can, put it in some closed circuit that can recycle it constantly, this will solve this problem. So for me, this is the big issue.
Right. For both those processes, use a lot of water. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay. Sam, Mims.
Yes, good morning to everybody. As concerning the SWO, the questions that were just asked are most valid and are of concern to a lot of people. But those questions will be answered today. The gentleman who was able to answer the question got stranded at LaGuardia last week when that plane slid off the runway. And so in my conversation with him, he understands that we need to have that information in order to make an intelligent observation. So we will get his answers to those very same questions that were just asked sometime today. And since you all seem to be favoring 10 o'clock tomorrow as a new deadline, I would submit to us before we not consider them in the light that we perhaps should consider them, that we wait until we get the answers to those questions.
Oh, that's fine. We can skip over that. We haven't heard from them yet. I didn't realize you're saying he was on that plane?
No, he was not actually on the plane, but he was affected by the fact that the plane slid off the runway. And
I see.
As a result, he was stranded in New York for an extra day. Did not arrive back until late Saturday. And so
understood.
With him, he indicated that he would have those questions answered and the information submitted to us on today. And so
okay.
We all had those same issues.
I understand, and we can certainly commiserate with that. Jonathan, she's back. Never mind. I was going to say Christy got kicked off and needed to be put back into the presenter. Thank you, Sam. So I'll take other hands if people are comfortable, we can just move beyond that one for the moment. Brian?
Okay. So yes, I agree with Sam that we should not go into too much detail and try to anticipate any of General Atomics' answers. I just want to point out two things. First of all, there are some things that we can accept as being engineering challenges that will need to be addressed, and we need to have that confidence level raised by the answers they provide. And then there's other levels like basic scientific concerns. Is the science there yet? I have less concern about the destructive capability of SQUO ultimately. I know it is very destructive. It takes a lot of energy and pressure to get water up to its supercritical state. Nevertheless, everybody has to keep in mind that it is a thermal process. Just because it's being done underwater or in water, it's going to generate a lot of gas, as if you're opening up 100,000 Coke cans all at once when that system depressurizes and degasses. And I want adequate assurance there about emissions monitoring because there is going to be a lot of gas release, including monitoring organics in the vapor. I don't think that's inappropriate. It's established science, but you still have to confirm the emissions. I mean, incineration is established science as well. We would not accept an incinerator without emissions monitoring. So I just want to make those points.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. It obviously applies to every single technology that the gas emissions have to be monitored. So this is just a given.
Yeah. Great. Bob?
As one who owned a sophisticated environmental laboratory for a number of years and was accredited by a number of agencies, just the facts that I've known through the years are that water samples are easier to analyze in many cases for organics, volatiles and semi-volatiles. I think scientists will bear me out, and volatiles are still something that I'm not comfortable with the emissions from stacks and things like that as being able to be tested, monitored and tested to the level that it is in water.
No, this is not true. You can test for volatiles. There is a technology that you can test. Maybe not continuous monitoring, but you can test it.
Yeah, I don't think Bob was saying you couldn't test it. It's just harder, and you can't capture it in the same way you can capture water. Is that right, Bob?
Right.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Brian, is your hand still up from before, or is that new?
Sorry, I'm taking it down.
That's okay. Okay, let's move on to Munirem. Comments?
Doug?
Who's that?
This is Karen Price.
Hi, Karen. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I can't get my hand thing up.
That's okay.
Well, I just want to make a quick comment so people understand, because you indicate on here the permit at Camp Minden. We were in the permitting process with Explo on the SWO, but they were in a test performance mode on the equipment. They were not authorized to operate at that time. They were running material through the process to demonstrate to us that the equipment could operate. And they had run some hazardous materials through it. They had not run the propellant. And we had gotten no performance data from them to indicate their process was functional. And also, we just have a small concern. We would like, as Sam said, we would like to get full information back from these processes because we have some concern about their throughput, demonstrating their throughput, because these machines, the way they operate, from our engineers who have read a lot about this process, which is not, a new process, it's been around a while, that there can be some concerns with the equipment fouling up and having potential maintenance issues. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Doug,
okay.
I've got another.
Go ahead, Bob.
Now that we've got EPA there and DQ, in order for a vendor to release water, maybe even large volumes, does the base currently have an NPDES permit? And if not, that's something that we might have, that the vendor is chosen going to have to look at, discharging water from Camp Minden, you see. I don't know what the capacity is for Camp Minden, but Do we know if they have a current permit? It's still in effect?
This is Karen. Explo did not have a permit, a water permit for this unit. There was discussions with Explo. They tried to indicate that they did not need it. We were not in agreement, but we did not get any further with them because the process was shut down.
Thanks, Karen. Slavo?
Yes, so regarding this discharge of wastewater, for me it's a very big concern because there is a standard EPA for composition or contaminants in non-wastewater and when wastewater discharge. However, if you think about the volume of water we're talking about, just fulfilling these limits is not enough. They had to be exceeded, to me, at least one order or two orders of magnitude. Because otherwise, with such an amount of water that would be released, it would be just a catastrophe if it will be just below the normal non-wastewater or wastewater limits.
Okay. Thanks, Slavo. Can we move on to Unirem then? Thoughts, comments? Sam?
Yes, I'd like for Slavo to repeat what his last concern was, please.
Okay, so my concern is that if you consider, because the normal wastewater or non-wastewater limits are, let's say, in milligrams per kilogram or per liter, okay, of specific organics. If you look at the amount of water that is going to be released for such a treatment, let's say 5 million gallons, if you calculate how much of, let's say, benzene it would be, it's a huge amount.
Did that help, Sam?
I'm still not okay. I want to be sure I got this. I know he's concerned about the water, and he's concerned about the waste, the contaminants that may be in the water.
Right, because this is the magic of big numbers, okay? So if your wastewater limits are, let's say, set at 1 milligram per kilogram,
okay,
for some regular wastewater facility, it may be not big, but if you suddenly release 5 million gallons that will have 1 milligram of benzene, or just below 1 milligram of benzene per 1 liter, if you calculate it and multiply it, you will get a very large amount of benzene.
So what I'm hearing, and we heard this message also last week around air emissions, is that it's not enough to just meet the standards. You guys are looking for something that gets to as low as possible because of the cumulative impacts of this volume of material.
I got it.
And if it gets to estuary or groundwater in this specific area, it will actually push up the levels very, very high.
I got it.
Hey, Christy, I don't know if it's happening on other screens, but on mine, your typing keeps disappearing, so I can't see it. Not sure why that is.
Odd. I don't know what to say about that. I can see it on my screen.
Okay. I'll keep clicking back.
Okay.
And maybe our screens are just different. But I want people. Can people see the notes as they're being typed?
We have the same problem you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try. I just clicked it back up now. Are you able to see it now?
If you scroll up, Doug, you can see it.
Yeah. Okay. So everybody has the opportunity to scroll.
Yes, I
don't
see it.
Yeah, we'll just do our best. Okay, thanks. Sam, are you done with your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Bob?
we still didn't get anybody to comment, and maybe Colonel Stuckey could do that. He knows maybe what the capacity of the treatment plant is there at Camp Minden, and when was the last time that he remembers a discharge of NPDES permit being active there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Flournoy. Yeah, the other day we briefed that treatment plant. It's a new treatment plant, and it has a capacity of, I think it's 240,000 gallons per day. And I ain't got a clue what a NDPS permit is.
That's the pollution discharge, your wastewater permit.
Okay, and we have a wastewater permit, but what it measures, off the top of my head, I don't know. I'll find out.
Well, usually what we call wet chemistry, BOD, fecal coliform solids, and things like that.
Yep. That sounds familiar, but I'll find out for you. But it's important to note we do not have an industrial wastewater permit. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's unlikely you'll have the particular compounds that we're talking about PDES permit.
This is Karen. They have a municipal wastewater permit. That's just for stormwater and sanitary sewage.
Thank you, Karen.
Karen, I'm sorry. This is Mary Lee. Would you mind saying that again?
That's a municipal wastewater discharge permit. It's just mainly for sewage and other stormwater runoff.
Okay, thank you so much, Karen.
Of course,
okay.
Stormwater runoff may include some compounds like DNT and things like that are in the soil from runoff. So,
can I?
How do we know they're not running off? They're not in that discharge.
I'm gonna just move us along here. We've asked the Colonel for that. Let's try to get that information. I think anything that involves creating water is going to have to look to get the right permits and do it in the right way. So we've got that captured. Rick Broussard, I see your hand.
Yes, I wanted to comment on that NPDES permit. They're usually 5-year permits, so if that's a relatively new plant, then it should have a 5-year discharge permit. And usually, and on the City of Minden permit, it states that treatment works treating domestic sewage, which is what Camp Minden would be doing, that receive hauled sewage sludge may not accept greater than 3% of the facility's expected flow in hauled sewage sludge, and this would classify as hauled sewage sludge. It would be a indirect industrial discharge, and 3% of their 240,000 gallons is only 7,200 gallons. So, if that permit coincides with mine, that there's a limited quantity that they can receive on a daily basis as well as quality, because they're going to require a complete priority pollutant examination of the effluent from any process that takes place over there.
Okay, thanks, Rick. So let's move on to the Munirem technology. Any questions, comments, observations you want to make sure we capture? Slavo? Assuming Sam, Rick, your hands are up from the previous comments.
So my comment for the Munirem is, this was my impression that this technology is not exactly prepared right now to handle the propellants in the Camp Minden. It was seemed like a little bit put all together in whatever time they had, and I'm not sure they have a clear idea how to handle many problems. Like, for example, I think the tanks are open, there will be emissions from the tanks, so this particular, among those three that we talked about, is I would say, the biggest concern for me.
Okay.
Not to mention that only 95% of mass is being reduced, which would be a large residue left.
Got it. Nikki?
I'll put my hand down, sorry.
Okay. Any other comments or observations around the Unirem? Okay, let's move to the CH2M Hill team. Any comments, thoughts? Rick, is your hand up new?
I just wanted to reply. I don't know if everyone received the questionnaire from Unirem. I received it this morning, and they copied you on it. So I don't know if you dispersed that amongst everybody.
I did. I sent it with the agenda.
Okay.
So everyone now has that information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Doug, this is Reynolds.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, I'm kind of losing my voice here. On the CH2M Hill, I noticed on your table it captured a 99.95% destruction efficiency. And in my notes back from their presentation, I thought that they had said 99.95, but by the end of the process through the second burner, it was at a 6.9. Does anyone else know for sure where that one was? So I just want to be sure I note it correctly.
I pulled the 99.95 off their filled-in sheet. They very well may.
I thought it also had 6.9 at the end of the process. Does it not say that?
That may well be true. It wasn't on the form that I pulled this from.
Oh, okay.
I'll go back and double check. If you see that on the form, let me know. And anything on here that needs to be, amended or added to, let me know. I'm just trying to get the basics from what people sent us, not doing any editing at all, just carrying it over from their forms.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So, from my notes, what I have in my notes, their afterburner or secondary burner has 99.9% destruction, and generally, what I understand, what they were saying, that their tunnel furnace is at oxygen controlled level, which means this is kind of pyrolytic process that they generally decompose the material and form the gas phase organics that are supposed to be destroyed. I'm not sure if I understood that correctly from what they told me. And if it's processed like this, I think the 99.9% destruction in the secondary chamber is kind of low, because you will form a lot of gas phase volume.
This is Dolores. Can I speak to this?
Hey, Dolores.
I'm just looking at a chart that in the tech committee that we put together, and what we identified was that it's 99.95% on solids. There are 6 nines from the stack, and the gas is clean to 6 nines. It shows 57,600 pounds a day of throughput, and a total time processing of 16 to 19 months.
We'll update this with that information.
So this 6 nines applies to the starting material. We need to remember that.
To the stack, not to the destruction efficiency.
Right, and I don't know if I have the same thing that Dolores has, but I went back to read my notes from their presentation, and that's what they said, that leaving the exhaust stack, it would be at the 6.9. The actual destruction within the tunnel furnace was 99.95.
Right. I just didn't. I hadn't put that 6 nines into this stack column.
Okay, that's fine. Column. I just that clarifies. Thank you.
Any other comments there? The El Dorado rotary kiln. Any comments, thoughts?
Well.
Oh, Francis, hi, you're on.
Yeah, good.
Hi, I just got on, and so I'm trying to get caught up to speed. My question on that one was how long it was, because we understood that a rotary kiln really needed to be 1,000 feet long in order to efficiently destroy the material, and they did not answer it. However, I've since heard that it's only 30 feet long, and I wonder if we can get that clarified, how long the rotary kiln is.
We haven't heard back from CH2M Hill on their questions yet. So as I write to them today with the deadline of noon tomorrow, I'll ask that question specifically.
I thought we were on the rotary.
No, that's El Dorado, isn't it?
Dorado?
Are we on the rotary kiln?
I thought you were going back to CH2M Hill. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll ask that of El Dorado.
Tunnel.
I just got another batch. Yeah. So Francis, Bob actually sent me the answers to your questions this morning, while we were on the phone here. So it's probably in there.
Okay.
I'll get to those as soon as the call ends.
So right now you're speaking about El Dorado or CH2?
Dorado rotary kiln.
Okay. Do you want to know the information we have on our chart, Ms. Dolores?
Just general comments and questions that you want to make sure that we're capturing here. Yes.
We show 99+% solids.
Oh, it was much more than that.
And gases within Euro percent, which I don't know. I can't translate that. 550 pounds per hour of 13,200 pounds per day, which is pretty low compared to the CH2M Hill. They seem to have some difficulty with monitoring the emissions, or at least we can't get much information on that. And it appears to be a permanent installation, which can always be torn down, but right now it's a permanent type thing.
Yeah, I think most people have to recognize that the volume and speed that this has to happen at, we're talking big installations for all of these, and
right, but some are able to process much more, like the right. Even the El Dorado incinerator does, in my chart it shows 50,000 pounds a day, and like I say, the CH2M Hill does 57,600. So when you look at the 13,200, that's a little marginal comparatively.
Any other thoughts, comments on this? Rick?
Yeah, I remember reading they were talking about 75 kilograms per hour, and when you convert that to pounds and do it on a 24-hour day, you're just a tad bit under 4,000 pounds a day per unit, and at that rate, it would take almost 20 units to meet our expected demand around 80,000 pounds, or at least over 60,000 pounds. And the reason why that throughput is so slow is, in fact, that it's only 30 feet long. If you had a 1,000-foot cylinder out there, your throughput would be much faster because it's the resident time that's involved in it, and the longer the chamber, the faster you can feed it through. So with a 30-foot long chamber, that's what's limiting their throughput, and because of that, I think 3,300 pounds a day per unit is just not anywhere close to what we need.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments on that? Clean Harbors technology, thoughts, comments?
Well, is there a scientist that can speak to this? They probably know more than I do, Dolores. However, the problems appear to be in the pollution control system for monitoring.
Right. This is Slavo. So the problem is the way this system is designed is that you have constant motion, like elevation of the material up the tube because it's a vertical installation. And what it effectively does is there is no secondary combustion chamber. You just generate, in every stage, new pollutants. And this, I'm afraid, will result in much lower potential for control of the emissions.
Francis?
Is my hand still up?
Oh, yeah. Is that from before? Sorry.
That is before. I'm going to wait till the end because I'm trying to get caught up on what's going on here.
Sure. We're just walking through each of them to see if any observations or questions or thoughts that people want to make sure we capture here. Okay, how about the USD mail?
Look, hold on a second.
Bob?
Well, I don't want to comment about USD mail, but it seems like this effort that we're going through doesn't answer all the questions. I mean, there's so many things left out that we're looking at something, and then we're going to have to come back tomorrow after more points have been addressed, and that's bothering me right now in spending this time when maybe we ought to have this meeting tomorrow after lunch after we've gotten all the information in by the vendors.
We can do that. That's fine with me. I mean, there is a challenge with what we have. We have a lot of information now. We'll have more information tomorrow. We'll have more information the day after tomorrow. I think that's just sort of the nature of how this is moving forward.
I could add one thing is that on this, it shows 1,000 pounds per hour per machine. What is that? 24,000 pounds a day. How many machines were they proposing? Do you remember?
Remember which one this was?
This USD mail, it says one unit exists, more could be fabricated.
I don't know how many they ultimately proposed. They basically proposed that they could run them in, together to meet the capacity needs.
Now, I think this is a similar situation that we had at CH2 mill, that this is again a pyrolytic system that generally what it does by thermal method is just decomposition of a polymeric material that's a nitrocellulose to smaller molecules. They are being airborne, and then they have catalytic converters to destroy those. So the only issue is, initially they said they're going to put one catalytic converter when we talked to them, which will give only 99.9 destruction, again, of these gas phase pollutants. They say that they can put multiple catalytic converters. So this is, from my perspective, is the view of that, how many they can put. And catalytic converters are expensive, and I don't know how many they are willing to put.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions around that? And I recognize that we have incomplete information. We only have a couple left. Just sort of get some of these key observations. Then we could talk about whether we want to just have another call tomorrow with the updated information.
Well, I think the general problem is that majority of this information is proprietary, and we'll never get it.
Yeah, that's my fear as well. Is that what some folks are looking for is not going to be in our system. It'll be there for the procurement system. The ATON system, any thoughts or observations?
If I may, this is Slavo. I think this ATON system is this is the microwave, right? Microwave system.
Correct.
I think this one is actually very interesting. The problem is that they have a very long lead time, and I'm not sure if they can do anything because their lead time is over a year. Which I think, this is kind of, we can't wait a year.
Right.
The other is, I think they were looking at other uses like destroying cars. Isn't that the one that was going to destroy cars?
Well, that's another. I mean, that's a different issue, and it's already on the community doesn't want any other waste or any permanent facilities. So I think you can take care of that pretty easily.
Because their volume is impressive, 4 to 6 tons per hour.
Okay. What about the CO2 AL?
So this is Slava again. My biggest concern is the amount of this alumina they're going to produce in this process. For 1 pound of M6, they're going to produce 1 pound of alumina, and they have no chemical analysis what's on this waste material. Nobody knows what's there. And it's a huge amount of waste. It's the same amount as, the input.
Right. Any other thoughts about that one? And the Dobbins process, in a different category here. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, this is a very small batch process.
And finally, the El Dorado contained burn indoors.
So this is Slava again. So I think this contained burn indoors, the biggest problem is that the control over the gases is very poor there, and a very poor control over the combustion process by itself. So by definition, it will create much more gas, byproducts, and their units, the air pollution control devices, they were not, I think, to the specs. This is more, I think, towards the bulk treatment of the materials, which would be a problem at Camp Minden. That's my opinion.
I agree, Dolores.
Okay. So that gave us. Oh, Brian, I see your hand.
Yes, I have a question for Slavo. Now, he said that there's less control of the gases, but there is an afterburner on the system, and that is after complete particle filtration through 2 stages, including a HEPA filter. So we're getting rid of all the particles. Then we got this afterburner, which can have a hold time of whatever the specs require it to be set to. And then I asked a question last week of the gentleman that presented about the possibility of installing a carbon filter, an activated carbon filter, which would be very high area, surface area. And he was amenable to that. He pointed out a couple technical things that they were going to look into. So, I don't think it should be written off, because although I never claimed to be a fan of burning anything, this is something that I think is a 2015 style combustion system, and not 1915 open burn. So we're way beyond, where we were. And that's something I think we need to find out some more answers to.
Well, that's fine. I agree with it. If everybody wants to look more into it, there's no problem. What I would like to see actually, if we want to consider it, is how the actual burn is being propelled inside. If it's just a self-sustained burn, which there is no control over the temperature. Because the key is, if you have a normal incinerator, you control the temperature. You have a additional fuel that burns it, and temperature is well controlled. You control the residence time of gases in the combustion chambers and so on. And this gives you a much lower concentration of pollutants in the off gases that goes to the secondary burner. Because obviously, even secondary burner has some sort of efficiency in destruction. So if you feed more to secondary burner, automatically it will emit more also because the destruction is what it is.
Excuse me, Ms. Dolores. What's really good about this is it has that 50,000 pounds a day. The real problem is that it's permanent and it's a pretty long setup time, 11 months. So.
Any other comments? So, thanks everyone for the patience to walk through that and provide those observations. I think again we're really trying to get a sense of what the group can possibly think about, weigh in on within the limitations of time and information, and how to make all that work. It's clear, a lot of the factors that are important to the group as you move forward and as you think this through. And so what I'd like to do now is talk about maybe what are those key factors. Francis, I see your hand up. Before I move on.
Yeah, I would like to talk now, Doug. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a lot of things to say, so y'all bear with me. So when we asked for this dialogue committee in the beginning, the goal was that we could examine all of the science and choose a safe disposal option. And what we have promised to our community is that we will come out of this process able to tell them what is the safest way to get rid of the M6 so that they can get behind that and fight to protect their community. And I do not feel right now like we have adequate information to make that decision. And every day I find out new information that I didn't know before and that I had thought that we were going to be able to do something and then did not realize that maybe it would not work. For example, I thought that under the MAC standards, we would be able to ask for the strictest pollution abatement system in the world for a thermal treatment, okay? And I found out last night that as long as it meets the emission standards during its test burn, then they don't have to put all that stuff on there. And so that's kind of a deal breaker for me to know that we wouldn't have the best pollution abatement system in the world if we're going to burn this stuff. And so if we don't have all that information, we can't make good decisions. And it's incredibly frustrating to me that we have been working on this for a month and we do not yet have information from the agencies specifically about these technologies. And, that's just unacceptable. Our team spent 10 hours in meetings this weekend trying to figure this stuff out. Several of our scientists were up late at night reading through these documents, trying to find all this stuff. I know I sound like I'm in a bad mood, and I kind of am, because we cannot set ourselves up for failure. We have got to get to a safe solution. We have worked hard for 3 months to get to this point, and we cannot make decisions without the science. Okay, so this is why I have 4 questions. Number 1, if commercial hazardous waste incinerators have not been built in this country for several years, are there any hazardous waste incinerators that are currently operating under the new emission standards under the MAC guidelines? Because if they're not, then many of these thermal treatments are going to take 11 months to set up. And then what I found out this weekend is that you have to do 3 trial burns, get the data sent off to the lab, and get it back, and that can take 2 to 3 months. So what happens if we go with the thermal technology, we wait a year to get it up, and then we find out it doesn't have the destruction efficiency that we need, and the throughput's going to have to be a lot lower, okay? These are huge questions that we have, and we need answers. I want to know, of the hazardous waste incinerators that are currently operating in this country, what is happening in the fence-line communities? Are there any health concerns that are happening? I want to know, how much variation is there in what their emissions they're going out? How much does that vary from their trial burns? Right? Because I understand the issue with hazardous waste incinerators in this country is compliance, not necessarily destruction efficiency. I want to know more about the SCRO process, and it's appalling to me that we don't have someone from Aqua who our taxpayer dollars paid for this technology to be developed, and there is an expert in this country somewhere that our taxpayer dollars have paid to know everything there is to know about that technology, and they should be on these calls with us. Okay? We have to have better information about this, and we cannot make a decision without all of the information, and that needed to happen like last week, and it has not happened. So I don't know what the answer to this is, but y'all got to step up and give us some actual information. Christina, are you on the phone still?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to go talk to J.C. King, and I want you to get him to get someone that was involved with the Aqua process and can talk to us about SCRO on the call. Okay? And I understand that y'all don't want to do that, but y'all work for us, and this is your responsibility to get us the information that we need. Okay? And then I want someone from the EPA to be able to talk to us about these hazardous waste incinerators, tell us when was the last one built in this country, tell us what are the emissions that are being put out by the ones that are currently in this region, and tell us how much they vary from their trial burns to their everyday operation, because I understand there's this thing called startup, shutdown, and malfunction where sometimes they're allowed to have more emissions than it's legally allowed. So I want all of this information, and I want it like tomorrow. Okay? And we can't do this. We got to have the information, or we're all wasting our time, and we're not going to be able to make a good decision that's good for our community. EPA, can you do that? Okay, and one more thing, while you're thinking about whether or not you can do that, is I want you all to be able to explain to us what exactly the MAC standards require and how long this trial burn process takes. And what exactly would happen during that, and, why we would not be able to have the best pollution abatement system in the world. Because if we go with that, then that's what we need, because we've said that we're going to protect our community. Okay, folks, I'm gonna stop stopping. But, honestly, this is ridiculous. We have to have the science. You need to get us the experts, and you need to get them now. Thanks.
Okay, so this is Slavo. So let me try to answer some of your questions. And in a sense, I agree with some of your concerns, and I actually did talk about it at the very beginning that, and I asked EPA if we can actually put a limit of total emission from whatever process it is, of how many organics can be in total emitted over the whole treatment process. However, with whichever technology we're looking at, it doesn't matter if it's a thermal treatment, it doesn't matter if it's a hydrolysis or any other treatment. Every single one will require some test period for this particular site and for this particular process with treatment SM6, because most of the vendors, they didn't do it before, so they even can't say what their emissions will be. And I agree with you, it's very frustrating, and we're not getting this information. But part of the problem is because they don't have the information.
Bob?
As I said earlier before Francis got there, I think we're premature at this point, but Francis, we have given tomorrow till noon, I think, for all the vendors to get the information in. And then for us to have a meeting Wednesday morning, I think that's a little rushed. I think maybe we ought to look at having this meeting. I don't know if we can arrange it or not, maybe Thursday or Friday, where we've had time to really digest this stuff. And the thing that we also have to realize, number two, is that we were given August the 15th as a deadline for instability that they know about, the ESB, with the propellants and the M6. the thing we're forgetting is that with a lot of these systems, it's going to be 6 months to a year for any of the fabrication that's going to take place on the site. So we've got to use our heads there and say, look, we've got to have it quicker. We've got to have this thing resolved before 6 to 12 months. That's even fabricating it, not including the time that Francis said they've got to have a test burn. I mean, it could be 1.5 to 2 before we even start looking at burning some of this stuff. So I think we're too rushed for data right now. We're going at record speed to try to get all this data by tomorrow, and we've given them a deadline, and they should know it. And then it's going to take more than tomorrow afternoon to really, and tomorrow night, looking at all this stuff and put it on the chart. And Doug, I think you're going to want to fill in your chart. You know, I don't know how late you're going to be up tomorrow night, but Wednesday may be too early for us to have this meeting at Community House.
Okay, so let me give the EPA a chance to weigh in on this. We're hearing obvious concerns about the limitations on the information that we have in hand, the timing of the process. Recognizing we've all been moving very, very fast, and we're getting toward the end, and it's not all there. So let me ask Sam to kind of weigh in on that and some of the questions that Francis put forward around the ability to get, the state-of-the-art emissions treatment, and is it possible to demand things beyond what is just the permitting limits? Sam?
So I'm gonna try to cover these all at once or one at a time, but cover everything. With regards to new incinerators that have been built, we can query around. I am not aware of any new incinerators that have been built in our region for quite some time, but probably the biggest and most prominent hazardous waste incinerator is down in Port Arthur, operated now by Veolia. And we do have some information that we can get with regards to that incinerator, and the state of Texas keeps a lot of very detailed information about what they're doing and their compliance record, and we can work with you to get that information and find out if there have been other incinerators built around the country. There are not a lot of them, I would say, and it's not something that people are lining up to build, so that's just not a common thing to build new incinerators. With regards to the emission limits and max standards, what we want to make sure is that as you work with the vendors and they design their equipment and the control technology, that technology actually works and that the controls are actually compatible with the very specific technology that they use in burning, from a throughput perspective, from the velocity and volume of airflow, from the temperature perspective. You have to make sure all of these things match up. So when we say, are you going to install all of the best equipment, when you think of the best scrubber, the best baghouse, best of every single thing, then sometimes it may not be compatible with the actual destruction unit. So you have to make sure that things match and that you're actually achieving a goal with regards to air quality as opposed to a goal with regards to installing equipment. And we work very closely with folks in assuring that they have installed the best control technology, but it may not be the best thing in the world because the best thing in the world just may not work and fit on that piece of equipment. There's no better way to explain that other than you have to make sure that things are compatible and that they work together to achieve what you're really looking for. But that's something that obviously, as we looked at the vendors, we wanted them to explain exactly what it was that they planned on doing so that could be evaluated. And right now, some did and some did not. So as we go through this process, we're clearly trying to have an eye towards assuring that the best control technology is installed. And then finally, with regards to the explanation of the MAC standards and how, I think that we'd be happy to really explain that through. I'm not sure if we're going to have sufficient time today to try to explain MAC, but the MAC standards are technology standards, and they are really tied to achieving a certain consistency across the industry. So you effectively look at what the top facilities are installing, and because somebody's whispering in my ear, it's top 15%.
Yeah.
And that really becomes the standard. It doesn't necessarily mean that that becomes the minimum. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the maximum. And as we look at this under circular, we actually really try to always go to the substantive requirements and to then work with having those best substantive requirements be installed on equipment as we work through any type of operation that's going to require air or water emissions. So, and we talk a lot about air, but the same is true when we deal with water, because where there are water discharges, we have to effectively do the same thing and assure that the best technology standards for wastewater treatment are applied to any water discharges. And that has to take place before any water can be discharged into any receiving stream. So I'm going to stop there because I know folks still have a lot of questions, and I'm just going to see. I know there's still some follow-up that we need to do, but we're happy to do that.
Sam, the last piece I'd like you to just weigh in on is the timing piece and any flexibility we might have here.
This is Dolores. Can I ask one question?
Sure, go ahead, Dolores.
I think one of the most important questions that Francis asked was, when can we hear from an expert on SCWO who's involved with the Army or that aqua development? We really need that person because this is the one system that offers some possibilities that's different from the incinerator. And I appreciate that the Army gave us some answers from the expert, that Mr. King, but his era was under open burn, and we need somebody who's looking at the SCWO for the future. So I'm just wondering if that's possible to get that kind of person between now and tomorrow. I agree we need more time, but so many people have hotels booked and planes booked. We could go ahead and have this meeting, and if it's not enough, then maybe we'll schedule another one. But that is doable, finding that one person to talk with. We're going to have a conferences and talks tomorrow anyway, and it seems like that would be just a phone call or two to set that up.
Thanks, Dolores. Sam, any
yeah, we'll
Okay, can I open that?
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Francis again. Christina, can y'all get us an expert from Aqua to be able to talk about SCWO, ArcTech, and any of the other technologies by tomorrow?
Francis?
Yes.
the thing that I'm running into is we need to be tasked by EPA to do these things, and I know David is out of town, and that's creating a little bit of a logjam here. But I asked on Friday that any of the questions that EPA had regarding the technologies, we can't speak to specific vendors because of procurement issues, but any of the things that they had regarding the technologies, if they would get that to us, then we would, go about the process of getting the answers. I have not received anything yet. If Sam will agree to get that to us right after the meeting, I will, see what we can do in the time we have allotted.
So
Christina, I was problem right now, guys. Sam, I would like for you to right now on the call say to Christina, "Hi, Christina, can you get us an aqua expert by tomorrow's call Tuesday?" Can you say that right now for us, Sam?
Okay, so Christina, this is Sam Coleman. Can you get us an SWO expert from Aqua by tomorrow?
I will see what I can do.
Email.
I will see what I can do, and can you follow that up in writing, please? Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. And then, Sam and Christina, what else do we need to do on the ground to make sure that happens? Because y'all all work for us, and we appreciate that you're working very hard, but we're going to need y'all to work a little harder to get it. What else do we need to do to make sure that there is an expert here from Aqua tomorrow? Do we need to call our senators? Because we are more than happy to do that. Or the White House.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're talking about for tomorrow.
Excuse me, Frances. She said she would try.
Tomorrow.
Frances.
Yeah. Let me break in here. Hey guys, everybody, let me break in here. And by tomorrow, our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday. So if at all humanly possible, that we could get a SWO expert to call in. Probably. I don't know that you can physically get someone there, but that would be the preferred thing. And or call in to the meeting on Wednesday. We'll figure out how to get that technology to work. That would be tremendously helpful. I think, let's make sure that EPA does everything to make sure that request is there and the Army is acknowledging that request and whatever can happen to make that happen.
And then I'm just to follow up on that, I'm giving you all 24 hours notice that 24 hours from now, we will possibly start calling our senators and the White House and helping to make this happen, to speed this process up. Because I understand that y'all have bureaucracies and you have things you have to go to, but, when our senators want this to happen, I think it can happen very fast.
So I do want to, Slavo, you also have your hand up?
Yes, so I wanted to ask an EPA or some question, because he said that we have a regulation, we have MCAT and so on and so on. My question is, and I asked it before, is it possible that EPA can set up a higher emission standard for this one particular case than standard hazardous treatment site standards? Hello?
Yeah, I absolutely understand the question, and the answer is we typically go with whichever is the most protective standard. For example, where the state has something in place that governs the emissions, or if there's a max standard, and if that's the most protective, that's what we would use. Or we sometimes would consider doing a site-specific risk assessment, where the risk assessment may require something that is more protective, and that is what is in the regulation.
So can we do it with that site?
Well, yes, we can. But just keep in mind, as I said, we look at the most protective approach.
Yeah, but like I said before, the problem is here that we have this enormous amount that needs to be treated, which is not normal to most of the scenarios. And that's why it's a special case, and all the emissions will be in this local area from this huge treatment process. And that's why I asked before if we can put I don't know, an order of magnitude higher emission standard compared to any other process.
Now, I understand exactly what you're saying, and again, we can absolutely look at it.
Sam, what flexibility do we have with timing? What I'm hearing is that folks don't believe, and I'm not sure I don't agree with them, that this is going to be very hard to get done by the end of Wednesday. We don't have all the information we need. Do we have a little more time? I'm also hearing that it probably makes sense to go ahead and continue to meet on Wednesday, but we may have to have some additional meetings following that. That will be the schedule.
We have some flexibility with regards to time. We're trying to be in constant communication along with Colonel Stuckey and his team at Camp Minden with the Army Explosive Safety Board. We're constantly working with them to make sure that the monitoring of the site and that we're proceeding consistent with the recommendations of the safety board are things that we're all doing. And that does afford us a little bit of time. However, there is a certain urgency, as Dr. Flournoy mentioned, that we have to continue to move this process forward. But if there were, we needed to meet again next week, I think that's possible. We could have a conference call next week. I think that's possible. But we have to look at the solicitation process, which needs to conclude this month and not too far after or around the 18th of the month, I think is the time frame that the National Guard has set for that. And then we just have to be mindful that to inform that process, we need to really wrap up our work as soon as we can.
So, Sam, one of the questions is, if as we come to the table on Wednesday, will EPA be ready to weigh in on the various technologies at that point? And have you asked and will you ask the Army to weigh in as well?
And I know that in this forum there are lots of folks listening, and so my words are chosen very carefully with regards to that. We can weigh in with regards to the information that we have available to us on Wednesday. We're very careful that, for example, someone may submit information after Wednesday that makes their process or technology more appropriate for this site as opposed to what we know today, and we just have to be mindful that that possibility continues to be open. So I don't want to foreclose that that possibility cannot exist simply because it does, and we also have to be mindful that there's a solicitation process underway with the National Guard where people will be submitting both technical as well as cost information to them in response to their request for a proposal. And that information also has to be considered.
Okay. And is that a request you're going to also make of the Army to get any feedback they have? That's something that's been asked.
Yeah, we've made that request, and we'll make it again.
Francis?
Yeah. So, Sam, after this call, I'm going to send you in writing some specific questions about the hazardous waste incinerators and the compliance and whether there are new ones and what the standards are. And I also would like to know if y'all have anyone, because I understand the SCLO is operating in Kentucky, if y'all have any experts from that region that are overseeing that SCLO that could talk to us. And then I want to know about when y'all are putting in your comments on these technologies, I would like for all of that to be cited and for us to have the references. We've asked for that from the beginning, but I don't think we've had things that have been cited before. And I would like for you to right now ask the Army if they will do that as well, that by Wednesday they will have their comments on this technology, and that will all be cited as well. So can you ask Christina that right now so we can make sure that happens?
Yeah, I'm sending them a note right now.
That environmental justice.
Okay, because I really appreciate everybody's been working so hard, but the information we've gotten so far has not been cited, and that's what we've been asking for the whole time. And we also haven't gotten the specific comments, I don't think, from either the Army or the EPA about these technologies that we've been talking about right now. And we need that, and we need to know sort of what the context is, and that's why you'll have to provide the citations.
Today on the call, somebody was, I don't remember who was talking about the squall technology that were currently in place in CampMinden, and was saying that there were some technical problems with that.
The sound that they're saying ought to be coming through here, and I've hit up here, and then where it says...
Someone's talking, and we can hear it in the background. Slavo, that was Karen Price talking about the testing they were doing, but they hadn't gotten to the point of testing on M6 yet.
Yeah, but
she was just trying to clarify where that current process was.
Yeah, but she was talking about it, that there were some technical problem and issues related to that. Can she elaborate on that?
Yeah, Karen?
I was speaking to the CampMinden permit, the 12 operating there. I think Francis may be referencing the Kentucky one.
Yes, so I understand that the CampMinden one, Expo took a pump out of it and then tried to operate it, and they never actually put any waste to it. They just did a test thing, and it didn't work, but they had already taken a pump out of it. Right now at Bluegrass in Kentucky, they're using a SCWO to get rid of chemical weapons, and so there has to be data about how that process is working, and there have to be experts that are overseeing that process. And so I think it would be better for us to talk to the people that are actually doing it and that can tell us how it works.
Right. Christina, Curley?
Yes, I wanted to find out, Francis keeps talking about citations, and JC had a question on what exactly she is looking for in terms of citations. We're a little confused on that. We came into this a little later, and it has been a question that keeps coming up, but we're not sure what she's wanting us to provide.
Yeah, so I think that I would like citations to peer-reviewed science for any claim about how technology works, or to your own testing that you've done on technologies, if you have records of that. I would also, anytime that we talk about policies or standards like the MAC standards, I would like it cited exactly what page number that's coming from and quoted so that we understand the context for this. Is there anything else, folks from my team, that we're missing in terms of asking for citations?
Okay, so we've thank you, Francis. Does that answer your question, Christina?
Yes, thank you.
So we're a little bit over time. I want to try to wrap us up and really think about how we're moving forward. It seems to me we're pushing to get more data and information by tomorrow from the vendors, additional information from EPA and the Army. It doesn't look that practical to have an additional meeting before Wednesday. It looks like we will go ahead and have Wednesday, but that we will treat Wednesday not as the final meeting, but have an assessment sort of at the end of that meeting to really figure out where we are, what else is needed, and schedule any additional calls or meetings that might make sense over the following week. It sounds like we have about another week we could play with in terms of some more meetings. Does that seem like a reasonable approach?
Weren't you going to try to get the SCWO person on tomorrow to talk with us?
Well, there's no scheduled meeting tomorrow.
I know,
so
but it's not.
But I'm asking.
Set something up.
So that was the question I was posing. Does it make sense to try to get a meeting tomorrow, or to just build all this into the Wednesday meeting that already exists?
Well, if we got a bunch of people in the room, it's going to be hard to hear the SCWO person speak. You know, we won't have our phones and all that. I'm just thinking technically how to do it.
Right. We will have to work that out, and we are working on some sort of a sound system in that room. I'm just trying to figure out making use of everybody's time, the ability to schedule another meeting for tomorrow and make sure we can get the right person. We don't even know if we can get the SWO person for tomorrow. I'm just positing this as a way to move forward. The key change being recognizing that Wednesday's meeting is not necessarily the last meeting. Christina, is your hand up?
Yes, I'm going to say that if you're looking for the SQO person to come from the Army, because of the way we have to do this, anything that they present would be in writing to you. It wouldn't be a telephone conference. That's just, we have to go by the process that's been set up between the EPA and the Army on how we're participating in this.
Do you have a list of people that we could call and speak with informally?
I don't. I can find out if there's anything like that. So,
Christina, this is Frances.
Yes.
This system that we've got set up right now, it's just clearly not working, and so we're going to have to change it, and I appreciate that you're working hard within the system that we have. What is it that we need to do to make it so that somebody from the Army can actually speak to us? Because that's what we need, and we need that to be successful, and so we've got to change that. So tell me, what is it that I need to do, or tell the EPA to tell me that what is it that we need to do to make it so that we can have the actual experts that work for us in the Army to be able to come talk to us on these calls?
I truly myself do not know. I would have to ask our attorneys about that.
Can you do that for us?
I will do that and have them send something back to Sam.
Can you have this? Can we know that by tomorrow?
Yes.
Thank you.
Doug, this is Wilma. So when you said we really have another week, the issue is that on Wednesday of next week is when the solicitations are due.
I know. I mean, it's not a whole nother week. We do have some time after.
Can I just finish? So if we're going to give any recommendations that the vendors will hopefully pay attention to, we need to have something before even the 17th or the 16th.
Right. So the hope would, I would hope we would get a fair amount of work done on Wednesday, but recognize that there might still be some holes and questions in what the committee is wanting to do. I mean, I wouldn't see it as an all or nothing proposition.
And I just think that Francis is asking for an awful lot of information that is not going to be available on which to make decisions. And I think we have to realize that we're not going to get all of that information even after the solicitations have come in.
Yes. I mean, that gets back to other questions we had, too, about, some of this information is just simply not going to be available because it's proprietary or it simply does not exist.
So I think we need to make a decision of how we're going to move forward with the information that we have or will get during this week, and how do we come to some conclusion prior to the solicitation deadline.
I agree.
So what I was proposing isn't that we don't still try to do everything we can possibly do Wednesday. It's just that if there are some holes that can be filled with a few extra days, that we could take a few extra days. We could go into next week. Does that make sense or not to folks?
Well, kind of not, because if you go all the way to Monday, then whatever we find out, they only got, it's Wednesday, the following Wednesday, they open everything. So we would actually need to do things by the weekend or by Friday. It would really be only like a 2-day extension if we meet on Wednesday. Then that means by Friday, whatever, we would have to have some comments in to do any good for the following week. This is Dolores.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Dolores.
Well, this is Slavo. I think that whatever we're discussing here right now, I don't think it has any way on the vendors actually. They already know what they need to provide, what we want, and they will either do it or not.
Sam Mims, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. I have a question for the Army specific about the SWO. One of the things that concerns me is that there is a 10 gallon per minute unit that belongs to the Army that is currently stationed, that is currently stored at McAllister Army Depot. And it belongs to the Army, but it was built by General Atomics. I would like for Karen to ask the Army if they would be willing to let General Atomics use that unit if they were the ones chosen to do it at Camp Minden.
And I second the question.
We have that.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Can I get an answer?
Sam, can you repeat the question? I'm not sure Karen captured the thing.
The question is this. In consideration of the SWO technology, there exists the largest SWO unit that we know of belongs to the Army. It is currently stored at McAllister Army Depot. It is not in. It was built by General Atomics. And so my question is, if this is only an if General Atomics was selected as the technology, well, if the SWO was selected as the technology, would the Army be willing to let General Atomics move that unit from McAllister to Camp Minden as a part of their technology solution?
Is this directed to the Army or who?
Yes, the unit belongs to the Army. There exists a 10 gallon per minute. It's the largest SWO unit that we know of. It belongs to the Army. It used to be at Camp Minden up until the explosion happened. It was moved from Camp Minden to McAllister and put in storage. It was never operated, but it exists. And so I'm asking, and you can tell. Well, I don't want to get into that. But anyway,
to facilitate this,
I want to know from the Army if they'd be willing to let General Atomics use that unit.
All right.
This is Christina. Excuse me, Doug. This is Christina.
Yeah.
I have that question.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody's flipping papers or something very close to their phone. If you can put that on mute. So let me cycle back to Wilma real quickly. So Wilma, did you have a suggestion? We cut you off in the middle of your. Do you have a kind of a proposal to put on the table, or?
I think we have to have a specific date by which we make the recommendation that the community is waiting for, and I really think it should be no later than Thursday or Friday of this week. And if not, we're still going to be dying for additional information, and we can drag this out forever. I think we need to get this task concluded.
Okay. So let's all commit and do our very best to try to get all the information we can on the table by the Wednesday meeting. Recognize that if we need another call on Thursday or Friday, we will do that. The ideal here is let's wrap up the work of this group by Friday, and we'll finish Wednesday with an assessment of what we know and what we don't know, and how comfortable we are about what we're offering and talking about. And I think there's a certain level of reality in a situation that's uncomfortable for everybody. And I appreciate and hear a lot of the frustration and a lot of the upset about this, and it's all part of a process that's moving very, very quickly against really challenging odds. So we hear you, and Christy and I will do our best to make sure that we have pulled together whatever's possible from what we can help with, facilitate the process to be on the table Wednesday morning. I will send you shortly answers to the questions that have been actually flowing in during this call, and I will send a reminder to everyone, the vendors, that we're still looking for their information, and we'd love to see it by noon tomorrow, and then we'll plan the best possible meeting we can on Wednesday. We are over time. Let me ask if there's just any final closing remarks from anyone or any of the agencies as we get off the call.
Yes, I had. Yes.
Go ahead. Is that Sam?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Sorry, I was up from before.
I'm not sure if I totally understand where we're going, but it would appear to me that we have said that we would finish this process on the 11th. Now, I fully appreciate and fully recognize that we don't have all of the information that we need to have. I also understand that without the technical committee, without the work that we do, there really is no dialogue committee. So I would strongly recommend, I don't want to fall into a trap here of where we get pushed out of this process because we didn't recognize how crucial time was. So I would strongly recommend that on Wednesday, we having that final face-to-face committee, that when we leave on Wednesday, I would strongly recommend to the committee that we be finished. That we say to whoever we got to say to it, these are the things that we recommend, and this is it, with or without any information being added on to. Wilma is correct. The only thing I object to, not object to, but the only thing I would like to add to what she said is, I don't think we should go beyond Wednesday, because the whole world is looking for us to be finished on Wednesday. If we don't have the information, or the information is incomplete, that's not our fault. We've asked for the information. So we need to finish. This is my opinion. And I was in the Army, and I feel strongly about this. We need to finish this process on Wednesday. We need to say to whoever we got to say it to that, hey, we have done the best we could. We've looked at all of the technologies, and as a consensus or as a convergence of this group, here's what we think you ought to do, which is why I asked the earlier question I asked about the Army and getting that information about that SWO thing. But I don't think we ought to go past Wednesday. I mean, we're having a face-to-face on Wednesday. So when we finish on Wednesday, we ought to be through. That's just my opinion.
So let me get through the hands here. Rick?
I just want to comment about that meeting on Wednesday, that it's not going to be nearly as efficient as we would like it to be in my mind, because there's probably a handful of people that have a lot of knowledge and have been with every conference call and every meeting since the last dialogue committee meeting at the community house, but there's going to be a majority of people that are way, way behind as far as their knowledge of what's going on, and because of that, that it's going to take a lot of efficiency away from the meeting. So it's only a 2-hour meeting, and I think it's going to be impossible to do what Sam is referring to, even though I think that's the correct thing, but I just don't think it's achievable.
Just to correct, it's not a 2-hour meeting. It's a 5-hour meeting. So we are giving the time. But that does undermine your point. It will not be an efficient meeting. Christy?
And sorry for my voice, guys. Is it possible the Army and the EPA, if they could get their information to us not by Wednesday, but perhaps by tomorrow sometime, and then look to have the technology work group meet tomorrow night to try to do some of what Rick's saying? And I'm sorry, guys, my voice is terrible.
We got it. Let me get through the rest of the hands, and then we'll close with that proposition to the technical group. Sam? You just finished. So, Slavo?
So, I have, let's say, proposition for everybody what to do if you want to finish it quickly, because down the road I see a potential problem with, let's say, we recommend some technology. Technology is going to be selected, and it comes to the test run, and it doesn't work. Okay, so I would suggest that we prepare at least 3 to 4 options, and that they can be, after that, once these 3 or 4 potential options are selected, when it comes to the test, that they will be all tested, and then we can see where we stand. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I'm not sure I fully understood your proposal, Slava.
I'm proposing to recommend at least 3 to 4 different technologies from the list we have, because despite all the claims and all the tests that we've seen, I don't see a scenario that all of them will be actually achieve whatever they're claiming to achieve.
So it's creating expectations that we're not going to be driving to a single technology in the committee's work.
Correct.
And I think we said that up front too. So I think folks are comfortable with that. Francis?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more time that we worked really hard to meet the deadlines that were set by the EPA, and I appreciate that y'all are working really hard, you and the Army, but we've been asking some of these questions for months, and y'all are not meeting your own deadlines, and I know that you're working really hard, but this is not a good position that we're in to be faced with the choice with, whether or not we should extend the timeline to get the signs or we should make a decision without the signs. And so I'm expecting y'all to have this data for us with everything cited before the meeting on Wednesday, because that's your obligation, and I know that you want us to be successful, and I'm expecting y'all to do that. Thanks.
So and I am going to try to get us off the call. By show of check marks, are there? Oh, Sam, do you have another comment?
I'll let you finish your question. On the check mark, but I just want to say that I really don't think it is in our best interest to go past this deadline. I'm just telling you that. I really don't. I don't want any agency to be able to use the fact that we didn't get to this deadline as an opportunity to bypass what we are doing. And I'm really afraid that if we miss this deadline, that is precisely what's going to happen.
Okay. So what I was going to just kind of poll the members of the technical work group is, we do have a room reserved for tomorrow night. We could have an in-person meeting of the technical work group to go over the new information and plan for Wednesday. I could be there at that meeting. If folks are interested in doing that, why don't you just hit the check mark on your thing and let's see if folks want to do that, or would you rather just get to the Wednesday? So if you're interested in being...
This is Dolores, if you could add me as a check mark from the phone.
Okay, will do.
I think it's a good idea.
What time are we talking about? Because we need to get there.
It would be an evening meeting. It would probably be around 6. We would hopefully have a fair amount of new information by then.
Is it at the community center?
Christy, where is that the same room that we have?
Yes.
Yes, same room as the yeah. So I'm seeing a smattering of hands, 3 or 4.
Well,
can we make it a little bit later? Let's say 8.
Oh, we can. I mean, we can do any time that works for the committee.
Where is this meeting going to be?
Let me do this. I'm going to send an email out to the technical work group. It's got the same place as the full meeting, the community center. Let me send. There's enough interest that I think what I'll do is I'll send an email out to the work group so that you all can discuss over email. We can settle on a time and see if it makes sense and it's worthwhile. So I'm gonna turn back to EPA for any final closing comments. They had their hand up earlier.
Yeah, thank you. And let me just say a couple of things. One, in our deliberations and decision making, we really intend to honor the input on the dialogue process and recognize that given the very tight schedule and some of the constraints that we work under, has made this extraordinarily difficult and frustrating to some, but we would not ever even envision using the concept that we couldn't get some input that, by a certain date, that we would not consider that input when we received it. So we do have some time constraints, as I mentioned before, mostly attached to how we are able to move forward working collaboratively with the National Guard on the procurement process. And there are a few extra days in there that we can meet and have some more discussion. But we really want to honor the dialogue process and really value the input that we are receiving up to. The other thing, and I know that it doesn't look like we're going to get a chance to take comments from the public, but as we close out, I really want to just say that the concept that we're going to really move forward and fairly quickly before the procurement process concludes with the National Guard, really change our decisions where we will be agreeing to authorize under our action memo something other than open burn, and specifically our intention is not to specifically specify which option that is. That really is going to afford our ability and the National Guard's ability to take input from the community, and our intention is to get that done fairly quickly over the next 7 to 10 days. So I'll stop there, and I know we have to move on because we're way over time.
Okay, thanks everyone for your patience on this, and we'll be sending information today and tomorrow, and looking for a time to potentially get together tomorrow night, as well as obviously we'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks again, and talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect your lines. Presenters, please stay on the line.